and she's got that long drive down Right 5. She said, man, it has not rained in who knows how long, and we need some rain. Thursday evening, me and her are driving two separate cars because she stayed out there and we had the back to school night, so I drove out there too. So we're out there, and as soon as we get ready to head back, the clouds opened, and boy, it started coming down. She said, well, I had me another talk with God. She said, Lord, I know I asked you to give us some rain, but please let us make it home safely. He said to the sun and the moon, stand still. Don't move. And what did it say?
And the sun stood still.
And the sun did what?
Stood still.
The sun did what?
Stood still.
Sun didn't go nowhere. And what?
And the moon stayed.
And what else?
And the moon stayed.
Not only did the sun stand still and not go nowhere, the moon stayed still and didn't go nowhere. And what did it say?
Until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies.
Until God was able to allow the people to avenge themselves of their enemies. And what?
Is not this written in the book of Jasher?
Uh-huh.
So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven.
So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and did what?
And hasted not to go down about a whole day.
The sun stayed up. For how long?
About a whole day.
A whole day. Imagine that. About 24 hours, the sun stayed up. The sun stayed up in one location and the moon stayed up in another location. About the space of 24 hours. 14 says what?
And there was no day like that before it.
And there was what?
And there was no day like that before it.
Or what?
Or after it.
Mm-hmm.
That the Lord hearkened unto the voice of a man.
Remember now, mercy is a blessing resulting from divine favor. So because of Joshua's relationship with God, the sun stayed still, the moon stayed still, and stayed that way for about the space of a whole day, as it is said. But Joshua wasn't like Nebuchadnezzar. He didn't say, look at all this that I have done. Look at what I have done. I spoke to the sun. I spoke to the moon. And guess what? It stayed still. Joshua didn't do that. David had realized that he had divine favor of God also. And if you read through the scriptures, you'll find that mercy is talked about and spoken and written in the book of Psalms than it is any other place in the Bible. Mercy. Over there in the book of Psalms. In closing, St. John 5:25. So David realized that he had divine favor from God. God's grace and God's mercy. St. John 5:25 says what? Verily, verily, I say unto you. Verily, verily, I say unto you, what?
The hour is coming.
Mm-hmm.
And now what? Is.
And now is when what?
When the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God.
When the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God. And what?
And they that hear shall live.
So just as David recognized it, we too must recognize God's grace and God's mercy. And after something happens, don't try taking self-credit. After God's grace and God's mercy is shown unto you, don't try taking self-credit. What do the kids say? The kids don't say, good job, Mommy, you found a parking space. They say, thank you, Jesus. Be like the kids for a change. Verily, verily, I say unto you, the hour is coming, and what?
And now is,
And now is. When what?
when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God.
The dead just don't want to recognize God's grace or his mercy. They think that it's because of something that they did. The dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and what?
And they that hear
The ones that hear shall do what?
shall live.
Shall live. Thank you, brother. Thank you, congregation. God's grace and God's mercy. We got a couple minutes. I'm going to ask the brothers to go ahead and sing that song. Grace and mercy. Recognize God's grace. Recognize God's mercy that he has bestowed upon mankind. Because God is great and greatly to be praised. Pray my strength and growth in the Lord, that I might be nothing in myself, but just what God might have me to be.